particular, but missionaries that are in other countries that need our help. Wasn't it exciting a few months ago when there was a church in Aguascalientes, Cumbas District 3, and we had the opportunity to buy them a church building, and within one weekend we raised $10,000.
Amen.
I tell you what a joy it was for that pastor who had labored in that field, who had seen there's a building here, there's people here, we're winning them, but we want to have weekly meetings, we want to have worship just like we have worship, we want to have a preacher just like they have a preacher, we got everything ready, but for $10,000 we can make it happen, and we made that happen for them. That was exciting. And last month, we have a missionary that we support, the Houstons in Brazil, and they've been making inroads into the Amazon, into some of the people groups that live there that have never heard the gospel, that have never had a Bible in all the years that their people have existed. And they're getting opportunity to walk some 10 hours up into the jungle after taking buses and planes and meeting with some of these villagers and sharing that name, Jesus. That's exciting that we get to be part of what the Bible says is happening. That the good news has to go into all nations. And part of that means for us, and no matter how poor you think you are still richer than most people in this world. And we have a liberty and an opportunity to make large amounts of money that people in other places would. That's why they're trying to get here. That's why they wish they could be here. But those of us that have that opportunity, we might have some moral obligation to help our Christian brothers and sisters in other countries. And so we do that. When you give through the offering basket, when you give through the app, a part of that goes to help missions all over the world. You're already doing it, whether you knew that or not. Congratulations, you've already been supporting world missions if you've ever given at Riverside Christian Assembly. Look at 3 John chapter 1 verse 7. It says we ought to support these. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, your generosity is known. But not only do we send money, but we send the preaching. That's why we got all these fancy cameras and all these cameramen and all the editing room. Not everybody watches this. But we got these cameras here. Why? Because we want to send the message out all over the world. We want to preach to places that haven't heard the gospel yet, the eternal gospel. We're ready to preach in season and out of season until we've fully preached. Look at 2 Kings chapter 7. There's this terrible story. When the kingdom of Aram had surrounded Samaria, they had sieged the city so long and so brutally that they were long out of food. They were almost out of water. It was a terrible time to live in Samaria. And the king was walking through Samaria. He sees these two women arguing angrily at each other. He says, ladies, what's the problem? And the lady says, give me justice. Well, what happened? Well, we each had a baby. And she convinced me yesterday that we would boil my baby and eat him. And she said that today we would have her child. And now we ate my child, and now her child has disappeared. Tell her to give me justice. And the king just broke his heart, saying, well, what has become of the kingdom that people are behaving like this? That's how bad it was. Some men had leprosy, and they were on the outskirts, and they were starving too. The king looked around at those with leprosy and those that are eating their own children and said, what has this come to? And he got mad at God. Isn't it funny how we blame God for everything? And this is not God's doing. This is their sins doing. This is other people's doing it. And he threatens the prophet. And the prophet says, by this time tomorrow, he tells the messenger, inflation will be over. There'll be so much food, it'll be a nickel for a pound of bread. It'll be a feast everywhere you look. And the man laughed at him and said, you're a crazy prophet. And he said, you'll see it with your eyes, but you'll never get to taste it. Those men with leprosy said, we're so desperate. If we just stay here sitting, we'll die. Let's sneak out and let's see what happens if we see the other camp. Maybe we can steal some of their food, or who knows what will happen. Maybe we can join their army. And so the men with leprosy went out. They didn't know that the Lord had sent a spirit of fear among the army. And they had took off running. And so when those men with leprosy came, there was no guard. There was no watchman. So they got closer and closer and closer. And they looked inside one tent and there was food there. They gobbled it up. There was wine there. They started drinking it. There was money there. They started putting it in their pockets. And they looked around. It was a ghost town. They went to the next tent. They started scarfing all the food and taking all the garments there. And they said, hey, we don't know what happened. We hit the lottery. And then one of the guys with leprosy said, hey, if we don't tell everybody, they're going to kill us. We better tell the king that the siege is over. So they went, they told the king sent some horses, checked it out. He found out that the army had left. And so the people came out, started feasting on all the food again. And you know what happened? The inflation went down, just like the prophet said. And that messenger, he was trying to stop people from leaving the city, and they just trampled them to death. He saw